Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? If you would kindly press that thumbs up button, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, that would be fantastic. If you get anything from my work, a connect the dot, mind-blown moment, mushroom cloud moment, a new author to read, a new book to explore, please kindly consider supporting my work so I can continue doing this, and all the links will be in the Dropbox below. Thank you. Oahspe, because tornado sirens and power outages happen, and I got to do this all over again. But that's okay. So I'm going to pick off, this is the Book of Fragapatti. I don't know if I'm saying that right. We're going to go with the Book of God's Word first, and then I'll read the other. It's like 2 sections. We're going to start with chapter 26. In those days, Panya was king of Oahspe, and by title king of the sun, king of the middle of the world, king of kings, mightiest of mortals, owner of all human flesh, ruler of the earth, and master of life and death. It's a significant amount of titles. For nearly 4 years had Zarathustra been absent, and the effect of his preaching in foreign lands had been to cut off the paying of tribute to the city of the sun. For which reason Panya, king of Oahspe, had sworn an oath under his own thigh to pursue Zarathustra and have him slain. Fun times. Accordingly, the king had equipped many different armies and sent them in search of Zarathustra. But Ahura Mazda led Zarathustra in a different way on the one hand, and sent spirits to inspire the soldiers to go another way. Consequently, none of the armies sent to capture Zarathustra ever found him. When he was heard of in one city and the soldiers came to that city, he was gone. And it continued until now. Zarathustra had returned to the very gates of Oahspe. Because Zarathustra was the largest man in the world, he was easily known, and from a description of him, even those who had never seen him would know him the first time they laid their eyes on him. Asha had continued with the Zarathustrians, but in consequence of the persecutions of the king of Oahspe, they had been obliged to retire further into the forests and plains, unsettled regions, where rove Enlistians and wild people. To these, the Zarathustrians were friends, and the Listians came in great numbers and dwelt near about the Zarathustrians. After Zarathustra had completed his travels, he returned to the forest of goats. In the first place, to meet his followers and to rejoice with them for the great light Ahura Mazda had bestowed upon them. So when Zarathustra returned to them, there was great rejoicing, and there were present Zarathustra's mother and many of the Listrians who knew him in his childhood. After many days of rest and rejoicing, Ahura Mazda came to Zarathustra, saying, Behold, the time hath now come to go against the city of thy birth. Take Asha with thee, and I will cause Oahspe to fall before thy hand. Accordingly, Zarathustra took Asha and returned, as stated, to the gates of Oahspe. But he was known at once, and when he demanded attendance, he was refused, because the king had previously decreed his banishment and death, there being an offer of reward to whomever would destroy him and bring his skull to the king. The keeper of the gate, whose name was Zu Das, thought to obtain the reward and hit upon the following plan, saying to Zarathustra, I know thee, thou art Zarathustra, who art banished under penalty of death. I have no right to admit thee within the city, nor have I desire to witness thy sure death. But if thou wilt secret thyself till the change of watch, when I am absent, On the king's reports, thou mayest take thine own risk, but if I omit thee, I will also be put to death. Zarathustra said, as for myself, I fear not, but I would not have thee put to death on my account. Where then can I secret myself till the change of watch? Zudas, the keeper of the gate, said, within the chamber of the wall, go thou and thy friend with thee. So Zarathustra went into the chamber of the wall, and Asha went with him. And now, when they were concealed, Zudas called his wife and said unto her, be thou here, walking back and forth, that they who are concealed will think it is I, and I will run quickly to the guards, and they shall come and seize Zarathustra, from whom the reward is offered. And the keeper's wife came and walked back and forth, and the keeper ran quickly and brought the guards 1,000 men with spears and swords and war clubs and slings and bows and arrows. And they surrounded the place of the chamber on all sides. And spake Zudas, ironically, saying, come forth, Zarathustra, now it is the change of watch. And Zarathustra and Asha came forth and beheld what was done. Zarathustra said to Asha, the light is upon me. Go thou with me, no harm shall come to thee. But now is the time in which I shall fulfill what hath been prophesied of my youth. This is going to get juicy. So Zarathustra suffered himself to fall into the power of the Sun King, and the soldiers caused him and Asha to march in their midst to the place of their skulls. And there came tens of thousands of people forth to witness the proceedings. For at this time there were many who were in sympathy with Zarathustra, as well as many against him. And in order to stay the multitude, the captain of the army called out many soldiers in addition to those who made the arrest. Others ran to the king's palace, carrying the news of the arrest and the place he had been taken to. The king said to the heralds, though this man shall die, it is fit that proper judgment be rendered against him, as an example before all men. Go therefore to the executioners and command them to bring Zarathustra into my presence, that I may adjudge him to death according to law. This was accomplished. Zarathustra was brought before the king, who accosted him, saying, by thy behavior thou art accused before thy king, and I adjudge thee to death. But thou mayest be as an example before the world. I render my judgment before the heralds, who shall proclaim my words unto all who desire to witness thy death. First then thou wert ordered for arrest by my predecessor, and thou deliverest not thyself up to my soldiers, neither could they find thee, for which thou art adjudged to death. Second, without permission from the king of the sun, thou hast traveled to foreign lands, sowing seeds of disallegiance against the central kingdom, for which thou art adjudged to death. Third, the king of kings offered a ransom for thy head, and the king's soldiers were disappointed in finding thee, for which thou art adjudged to death. Fourth, in thy youth thou threatenedest to overcome the city of Oahspe, the city of the sun, and failedest to make thy word good, thereby being a teacher of lies, for which thou art adjudged to death. Fifth, thou hast cut off the foreign tribute to the rightful owner of the whole world, for which thou art adjudged to death. Sixth, thou hast revived the doctrines of the dark ages, teaching of spirits and gods, which things cannot exist, because they are contrary to nature and contrary to the laws of the king of the world, for which thou art adjudged to death. 7, thou hast taught that there is unseen creator greater than thy king, which is contrary to reason, for which thou art adjudged to death. 8, thou returnest to Oahspe not openly, but as a thief, and hid thyself in the chamber of the wall, for which reason thou art adjudged to death in the manner of thieves, which is the most ignoble of all deaths. Therefore I command the executioners to take thee to the den of thieves, and cast thee therein on the morrow at high noon. Thou shalt be hung up by the feet along with the thieves, where thou shalt be left hanging till thou art dead, that my judgment may appease thy best friends. Thus sayest thou against my decrees. Zarathustra said, all the charges thou hast made against me are true this day, but tomorrow's setting sun, I will have disapproved some of them. Today the kingdom is large. In 2 days I will be dead, and thou will be dead, and this great city will be destroyed. Yeah, the temple of the sun will be rent in twain and fall as a heap of rubbish. The king laughed in derision, and then spake to Oahspe, saying, thou art an old fool. Go thy way. So Oahspe was liberated, and Zarathustra was taken to the den of thieves and cast therein. And the den of thieves was surrounded by dens of lions that belonged to the king's gardens. And a bridge passed over, and when the prisoners were within, the bridge was withdrawn, and no prisoners could escape, but would fall prey to the lions, which were fed on the flesh of persons executed according to law. Getting juicy. During the night, Podya, king of the sun, bethought him that perhaps he might obtain the secrets of Zarathustra as regards his powers with oaths, and he sent him the following message, to wit, if thou wilt reveal the secrets of thy power to thy king, thy life shall be spared. And if thou wilt prostrate thyself before the King of Kings, saying there is none higher, thou shalt have 5 cities to rule over all the days. To which Zarathustra sent back the following reply, wit, Zarathustra hath no secrets to reveal, neither desireth he 5 cities, nor 1 city to rule over. Tomorrow I shall die. On the following night thou shalt also die. And yet erst thou diest, thou shalt see the temple of the stars rent in twain and fall down, and the city of oaths shall fall and rise no more. And Yasing in Jaeth shall become king of the sun, and his dynasty shall stand thousands of years. The king was surprised at such an answer, angered that he smote the messenger with his sling, and he fell dead. And the king ordered his body to be cast in the lion's den. It was near the middle of the night when the body was brought, and Zarathustra, being tall, saw above the wall, and he called out, saying, cast not the body into the dens with the lions, for I will call him to life in the name of Oahspe. And the men lay the body down by the outer wall, and Zarathustra said, he that is standing by the body shall lay his hands upon it, for the power of life is through life. And the man laid his hands on the flesh of the man's body betwixt the neck and the back. Zarathustra said, the words I say thou also. Life of thy life, O Oahspe, restore this thy son to life. And lo and behold, the man awoke to life and opened his eyes, and presently rose up, and Zarathustra bade him depart out of the city. Now the arrest and condemnation of Zarathustra had caused thousands of people to assemble around about the prison, and they held the man restored to life. And some of them went with him out of the city. And all night after that, Zarathustra healed the sick and restored the blind and deaf by calling over the walls in the name of the Father. When it was near sunrise the next morning, the place of the executions was crowded with spectators. Many of the Zarathustrians believed that Zarathustra would liberate himself by the power upon him. And on the other hand, the king's people, especially the learned, desired to realize his execution, for they denounced him as an impostor. The latter said, if he be the master of the Ihans, let him prove his powers whilst he hanging by the feet. It was the law of oaths to keep 12 executioners representing 12 moons, and at sunset every morning they put to death whomever so had been adjudged to death the previous day. Now they were in prison with Zarathustra, 2 thieves, condemned to the same ignoble death. And they were weeping and moaning. Zarathustra said to them, weep not, nor moan, be rather joyous. He who gave you life is still with you. He will provide another and better home for your souls. Behold, I weep not, nor moan. They who put us to death know not what they do. Rather should the multitude pity them than us. Ye shall this day escape from the tyranny of oaths. Zarathustra preached till high noon, and when the light fell on top of the temple of the stars, The 12 executioners entered the prison and bound the prisoners hand together behind their backs. Then with another rope they tied the feet, bringing the rope up the back of the legs and passing betwixt the arms. And they carried the end of the rope up over a beam and down again. And the executioners seized the rope and pulled up upon it. And they swung the bodies of the victims high above the walls and made fast, leaving them hanging there. Thus was Zarathustra hanging betwixt two thieves. And while as he was yet alive, a bolt of light fell upon the temple of the stars, and it was rent in twain and fell to the ground. And when the dust rose, it was a cloud that magnified itself. So the air of the whole city was choking. And there came another bolt of light. And lo and behold, the walls of the city fell down. And Zudas perished in the chamber of the wall. The multitude ran for the king, and they brought him out of the palace. Another bolt of light fell on the palace, and it was crumbled onto dust. The king called his guards, but they obeyed him not, but fled. So the multitude slew the king. The learned men then went down to the place of executions, and Zarathustra was not yet dead, but the two thieves were dead. And Zarathustra said unto the learned men, Now will I give up my body, and behold, ye shall say, I am dead. Let the executioners then take down my body and cast it into the lion's den, and ye shall witness that they will not eat of my flesh. And some shall say, Behold, the lions are not hungry. Thereupon shall ye cast in the bodies of the two thieves, and lo, the lions will fall upon them and eat their flesh. Then shall they learn, men say, Behold, Zarathustra, virtue lay in different flesh. Now I declare unto you, these things are not of the flesh, but of spirit. For angels shall gather around my body and prevent the lions from tearing my flesh. Of which matter ye shall prove before the multitude. For in the time of the lions are devouring the flesh of the thieves, the angels will go away from my body, and behold, the lions will return and eat of my flesh also. Whereby it shall be proved to you that even lions, the most savage of beasts, have spiritual sight and are governed by unseen world even more than man. When Zarathustra had thus spoke to the learned men, he spake to the Father, saying, Receive thou my soul, O Oahspe. And his spirit departed out of the body, and in the same moment the whole earth shook and trembled, and many houses fell down. So they cast the body into the one of the dens, wherein were 17 lions, but they fed from the body. Then the executioners cast the bodies of the thieves, and lo and behold, the lions fell upon them instantly. And then the angels went away from Zarathustra's body. The lions returned to eat and ate also. And the keepers turned in other lions, and all the flesh was eaten. And the multitude ran and bought the body of Zudas and cast it in, and the lions ate it also. Next they cast in the king's body, and the lions ate it, and were appeased of hunger. Now when it was night, some of Zarathustrans gathered together at the neighbor's house, and Asha was present, and they formed a living altar in order to pray for the soul of Zarathustra, and for the two thieves, and for Zudas, and lastly for the king. And now came the learned men, saying, Why have ye not during all these years notified us of these things? Behold, Zarathustra is dead, Asha said. Have I not carried the alms bowl publicly, proclaiming them from day to day? And the learned people said, Pity, old Asha, I knave hath droneth thus reason. Now I declare unto you, it is the same now as in the olden time. The learned men are further away from the Father than are those devouring lions. Ye look into the corporeal world for light and truth and power, but are blind to the spirit which underlieth all things. I declare unto you, whether it be heat or light or disease that floateth in the air, or growth that cometh out of the air, in all things it is the unseen that ruleth over the seen, and more powerful than heat and light and death, in Oahspe, the person of all things. Till ye have learned this, I explain nothing that ye can comprehend, and yet to know this is the beginning of the foundation of everlasting happiness. While Asasha was thus speaking, behold, the soul of Zarathustra came and stood before them, and he was arrayed in the semblance of his own flesh and color, in his own clothes. And he spake, saying, Fear not, I am the same that was with you, and was hanged and died, whose flesh was devoured by lions. I am Zarathustra. Marvel not that I have the semblance of a corporeal body, for its substance is holden together by the power of my spirit. Neither is this a miracle, for the spirits of all living things hold in the same way each its own corporeal body. As iron attacheth iron, the spirit learneth to attach from the air a corporeal body of its like and measure. Then inquired one who was present, Where are the two thieves? To which Zarathustra said, As steam riseth with boiling water, without shape or form, so are their souls this hour. For this reason was I sent into the world by the Father. Let him who would become controller of his own spirit unto everlasting life learn the Oahsmanian law, seeking to grow in spirit instead of living for the things of this world. Behold, there are here present lords of the hosts of heaven, who are sons and daughters of the Most High Oahsman, the Creator. They will now gather together and reclothe the thieves, and show you of what they are. Presently, the two Drudras, the thieves, were the hanged with Zarathustra, stood before the people in the Sagris, and they raved and cursed and moaned, but they were blind and dumb as to the place. Then Asha inquired of them as to who they were and what they wanted, but they only cursed him and added that they were to be hanged. Asha said, Behold, ye are already dead, and your spirits risen from the earth. To which they replied, Curses against the king. And now the lords of heaven set up the spirit of the king, but he knew not that he was dead, and he cursed also, whereupon the spirits of the thieves fell upon him with evil intent. And all the people beheld these things, but the lords of heaven took away the Sagris, and the Drudras could not be seen any more by mortals. Zarathustra said, As in the earth they were angered and dumb, they cling to the earth, for which the reason ye shall sing anthems and pray for them 3 mornings at sunrise, 3 high noons, and 3 evenings at sunset. Do ye this also henceforth, how forever for 3 days for all your kindred who die or who are slain. And ye shall utter only words of love for the dead, for whoever uttereth curses for the dead bringeth Drudras upon himself. In your love and forgiveness do ye rise them out of the torments of hell. And inasmuch as ye raise up others, doth Oahsman raise up your own souls. Curious if that's where Shiva, sitting Shiva, comes from. One who was present asked how long a spirit lingered around about, to which Zarathustra said, Some for 3 days, some for a year, some for 100 years, and some for 1,000 years, until they have wisdom and strength to get away. But after 3 days ye shall no longer desire the spirit of the dead to remain with you, rather shall ye to Oahsman. Deal thou with him and with us in thy own way. O Father, we are content. Better is it for the spirits that ye call them not back from the higher heavens down to earth. Better for you it is that ye remember them high up in paradise, for these thoughts will enable you to rise after you are dead. Remember that all light answereth everything in heaven and earth after its own manner. If ye kill, ye are answered in torment sooner or later. If ye utter falsehood, ye are answered in falsehood. If ye curse, ye will be cursed in return. If ye hate, ye will be hated. If you seclude yourself, ye will be excluded. If ye keep evil company in this world, ye will be bound in evil company in heaven. As ye seek to become a leader of men, remember that they whom ye rule over will be your burden in heaven. If ye teach not, ye shall not be taught. If ye lift not others up, none will lift you up. For in all things the same rule applieth in the heaven as on earth. For in the continuation and spirit of that which is practiced in the flesh. Chapter 30. On the following evening, when Zarathustrians were assembled for prayer and singing, the soul of Zarathustra again appeared before them in Sagres, teaching the word of Oahspe. He said, two people there are on earth, the one engrossed in the affairs of earth, the other in the affairs of heaven. Better is it for ye to be of the latter. The fool will say, if all people are engrossed with the affairs of heaven, then who will provide on earth? Such is the argument of the Drooks. Fear not, therefore, for the earth people before coming short of vultures. So also will be said of celibacy. The Drooks will say, if all people become celibates, then will the race of men terminate. Wherefore I say again unto you, fear not, for there will be plenty left who are full of passion and are unmindful of the kingdoms of heaven. Let all who can live for the higher light. The lower will ever be supplied sufficiently. Even as ye two peoples on earth, so also do peoples exist in heaven. The one followeth the highest light and ever riseth toward the highest heavens. The other followeth the affairs of earth and risen not, and hence is called a Druge. The later engageth in sensualism and quarrels amongst mortals, and inspiring them to evil and lower desires. One present asked, how shall we know one another, whether we be of heaven or of earth? Then Zarathustra answered, saying, seek to know thyself. Thou art not thy neighbor's keeper. Search thy own soul 100 times every day to know if thou practice the all highest according to thine own light. Neither shalt thou find excuses for the shortness, nor reflect overmuch on past errors, but use them as inspiration to perfect thyself henceforward. Another one presented asked, how of the thieves and falsifiers and murderers? Zarathustra said, the man who serveth himself only is worse than any of these. There is no resurrection for him. But if a man cease his evil ways to practice virtue, he is on the right road. A falsifier is like one with a clean gown on, that goeth about casting filth upon it. He soileth his own spirit. A thief is worse than an overburdened beast. He carrieth his stolen goods not only in the world, but in heaven to the end of his memory. A murderer is like a naked man who is ashamed and cannot hide from the multitude. When he is in heaven, his memory of the deed writeth in human blood a stain on his soul, which all others see. Another one asked, according to the Ahunamazian law, the highest, best man forsake the world, laboring to raise up the poor and ignorant, reciting prayers and anthems, taking no part in the affairs of people who are engrossed in the matters of earth. Who then shall be the government of the wicked? To which Zarathustra answered, saying, when there are not sufficient men and women for such purpose, there will be no wicked to govern. With all thy preaching that the highest life is celibacy, there will be plenty left who will marry. With all the preaching that the highest best man will not be a leader of men, nor a king, nor a governor, yet there will be plenty left who will fill the places, even though they beheld the walls of hell open to receive them. Another one asked, if Zarathustra separate a life by themselves, what will be their power to do good amongst the evil? To which Zarathustra said, as the highest heaven sent lords and masters down to mortals, so shall Zarathustrians send emissaries amongst the wicked, preaching the truth and citing the examples of Zarathustrian cities, communities. For above all philosophy that man may preach, practice holdeth the highest place and is most potent. See to it, therefore, that ye practice your Mazian law toward one another in all things. Avoid men of opinion, men of learning, who have pride therein, men of argument, men who quibble for proofs in unprovable things, men who wish to be known as wise men, men who deny, men that can see defects in everything, and have nothing good to offer in place thereof. Shun the disbelieving man, for he is diseased, and may inoculate thee, the flatterer, for he is purchasing thee a woman for a woman's sake, or a man for a man's sake, company for company's sake. For all these imply that the Creator is less in thy sight and not so well loved. One asked concerning spirits, to which Zarathustra said, for the affairs of earth, consult the spirits of the earth. The Jujas, for the affairs of everlasting resurrection, consult thy Creator, and his holy spirits will answer thee in his name. And to whichever thou hast made thyself companion, there will be thy abiding place after death. See to it that thou becomest not invaded by drujas, for spirits can assume any name and form, but weigh their words, whether they be wise and according to the Oahspe law. If they teach not the higher heavens, but profess a long life in the lower heavens, consider them by their words. To flatter thee, they will profess to remember thee in another life, and to please thee, say thou wert a king, and have many successions of lives on the earth. But of what value unto the sun is such philosophy, but to rise up away from the earth and from the lower heavens also? It was for bestowing this word unto men that I was sent into the world. It is to teach you to know the Father's upper heavens and the way to reach them, that his words were given unto men. As it was in the olden times, so will be again, ere another generation pass away. Jujas will teach that the spirits of the dead go into the trees, flowers, and inhabit them, and into swine and cattle and birds, and into women, and are born over again in mortal form. Argue not with them, their philosophy cornereth not thee. Whether they be in darkness or in light, judge thou by the glory and beauty of the heavens where they live. If their words are of the earth, they belong to the earth. If they are servants to the false god or false lords, they shall preach him who they serve. But these matters are nothing to thee, for thou shalt serve the all-highest, the Creator. In this no man can err. And in regard to the heaven whither thou wouldest desire to ascend after death, magnify if with all the ingenuity unto the all-highest perfection, people with thy highest ideals for the companions, then see to it that thou makest thyself a fit companion for them also. If thou do this with all my wisdom and strength, all the days of thy life, the Father will be with thee, and thou shalt be a glory in his works. Thus preached Zarathustra after the resurrection from death, from 3 days and 3 nights preach he before his disciples, and Asha wrote down the substance of his words, and they were preserved unto the generations of faith this, from that time forth. And from the words called the Zarathustrian law, the Hunamazian law, and the Oahspe law, and they were the first heavenly words given on tablets and skins, cloth and in books, to mortals, save what words were given in secret in the tribes of Ihins, of which the different nations of the earth knew nothing of their own knowledge as what they were. On the morning of the 4th day, when the disciples sat in Crescent, which was called the living altar of God, Zarathustra again sat in Sigris. He said, behold, the time hath come for me to rise out of Hada, where I have dwelt for 3 days. The gods were with me all my earth life, are gathered together here, and there are millions of them. Just near the river yonder sendeth the boundary line of heavenly ship of light. It is wider than the eye can see and higher than the eye can see. 1,000,000 of angels are singing in that ship, and there are great gods and great lords in it. So bright my eyes dare not look on them. They are the sons and daughters of the Great Spirit. The Drujas are all run away now. Their foolish garble is hushed, gone. It is as if another world came alongside, so majestic that this one was lost. Above high, very high yonder, something like a sun illumes the ship of fire. I know it is he who hath come for me. I go now. Whither I go, I will build for you all. And now, O Asha, the gods have thrown a mantle of light over thee. A chain reaches from thee to Oahspe. Asha was overcome and fain would have gone to the spirit. Zarathustra, the latter, said, stand thou, and I may kiss thee. So Zarathustra kissed Asha and departed. And this is the end of Book of God's Word for Fragapatti. That was pretty cool. Chapter 26 of the regular book of Oahspe. When Fragapatti entered the road of fire with his Albanza, where Athrava had stationed this musicians and groups of fuelers, the hosts abode broke loose from all bounds and propriety, so great that their delight, and they shouted and sang with trumpeters with most exalted enthusiasm. Many of them entered the Orion state, and not a few even the Nirvanian. And they became even as gods and goddesses, as they enticement, seeing and hearing, realizing, even to the third rate above, the brides and bridegrooms of Jehovah. These were but spasmodic conditions of light, from which they returned in course of time, being able to give descriptions of their visions. For Jehovah so created man with spells of clearness far in advance of his growth, that which he having realized, he returned to his normal condition to prepare himself constitutionally. Along the road on either side were mottos and sayings peculiar to the hosts of Hapacha and to the mortals of Gautama. When Hapacha saw these, he said, "How is it possible? Whence derive these gods this information?" But the light came to his own soul, saying, "The wise and good sayings of men below are borne by Jehovah's swift messengers to realms above." Horeb stood nearby and heard what Hapacha said, and Horeb said, "How can men and spirits be inspired to wise and good sayings? Who had thought to erect such signboards on the road to all light? And yet what darker deeds are done when the soul of man findeth curses and evil words to vent his awful sins, and walls himself around the horrid imprecations, that the which to the face in after time he had applied to be havoc of his own deadly weapons. How few indeed comprehend the direful thrust of hateful words, imagining them but wind, to pass away and to be seen no more, but which are placarded on the signboard of heaven, as his fruit sent to market. The poison dwelt out of his mouth to his brother's man. A man throweth a spear deadly, but it falleth on the earth and lieth there. But words and sayings are more potent, scoring deep in the soul of things. Fair indeed it is with thee, O Hapacha, and with thou hosts also, with your yonder pure scroll to enter Harati. As fast as the ship passed, the lights, the Etherian musicians came aboard, being anxious to meet Hapacha and his hosts, especially the Ihins, and to congratulate them on being the first harvest for the lowest heaven on the end of a cycle. And the strange to say, there were just twice as many as Sethians had prepared in the first dawn of earth. Fragapatti called the swift messengers belonging to the roads of Gon in Etheria, and he said unto them, "Go ye to Sethiantes, whose fields lie in the roads of Gon, and say unto him, Greetings, in the name of Jehovah. The earth hath reached Absad and Gumachala, home of Fragapatti, who sendeth love and joy on behalf of 60 million. First harvest of Haki, grade 65. Of these messengers, 400 departed, leaving a reserve of 800 who continued on the Avanza. The Judras, who were arrayed in gaudy attire, withdrew a little from the landing, fearing the light. When the ship drew near the walls and was made fast, the marshals of Meru came to the front, 2 million, as an escort to conduct all who chose the ascending stairs. And so great was the faith of Hapacha's hosts that over 50 million of them passed within the sea of fire, singing, "Glory be to thee, O Jehovah, creator of worlds." Seeing this great faith in them, Atharva commanded red and blue lights to favor them, and they were not one of the whole number that quelled or turned from the light, and now was beholden to many of them. Their first view of the glories and powers of gods and goddesses, Meru was illuminated in every part, the structure of the temple, its extent and magnificence in conception, with its hundreds of thousands of mirrors and lenses, is transparent in opal crystals, translucent and opaque circles, arches, hundreds of millions. The which, when viewed from one place, was unlike when viewed from another place, as if each position was striving to outdo the others in beauty and perfection, so that were a person to walk for 1,000 years in the temple, he would every moment see, as it were, a new palace of surprising grandeur. And so wonderfully was it arranged that the faces of 1,000 million people could be seen from any place a person might be, and yet all these people constituted a part in principle in the building, being the jewel stones created by Jehovah for the ornamentation of his celestial abodes. Horb, always quick to speak, said, "Oh, that angels and mortals would strive to make of themselves such jewels as these." Hapacha spake not, being overwhelmed with the beauty and magnificence. Yatanti said, "When thou art on the throne, Fragapatti, I will leave for the kingdom of Yatanti. Here then I will take my leave." Fragapatti shook his hands with him, saying, "Jehovah be with thee." So Yatanti remained where he was, but Horeb and Hapacha continued on with Fragapatti. All eyes were turned to them, and especially to Hapacha, whose persistence and faith in Jehovah had won the lower heavens to wisdom of love. And as they moved towards the throne, great Avathra rose up, smiling, holding out his hands to receive them. Next in back of Athrafa were the 5 goddesses, Ithro, Yuch, and Rook, Guisia, and Hemstisia, of the valley of Moab in Etheria, Cetisia of Wo Tabak, the one-time home of Fugitive, Sivetiv, and Nu. Again, I'm not pronouncing these correctly, and again, I can't with these words. Cordi Agua and Renava, of the swamps of Thoroligi, in South Yakar, of roads near Zuhata, and Hicho, in the South Etherian vault of Osbad. And the goddesses also rose up with extended hands, and now, because of the brilliancy of their presence, the throne became a scene of hallowed light, and threads thereof extended to all the council members, and by these were radiated outwards, so that every person in the temple of Jehovah was connected with the throne, which made every spoken word plain to all. Athrava said to Jehovah's name, "Welcome, O Fragapatti, and the hosts with thee." The goddess repeated the same words, and they were echoed by the entire audience. Fragapatti said, "In thy name, O Jehovah, I am delivered to my loves. Be that with me, O Father, that we may glorify thee. Receive ye, O my people, Apacha, son of Jehovah, who rose up and stood in the dark all night long, and faith in Jehovah. Behold, I have delivered him in dawn, and his host with him. And now there appeared, rising like a new sun, Jehovah's light beyond the throne, reddish, tinged, emblem of the western light, in honor of Hapacha. And it rose and stood above Fragapatti's head in great brilliancy. Then spake Jehovah out of the light, saying, "With my breath create I alive the earth-born child, with my hand quicken I the newborn spirit, and with my light illumined I the soul of my faithess. Behold, I dwell in the all highest place, and in the lowest of created things. Whoever findeth me, I find also. Whoever proclaimeth me, I proclaim in return. Hapacha, my son, savior of men, of my light shall thou be crowned." The voice ceased, and now Fragapatti advanced to the midst of the throne, and took of the light, and fashioned a crown, and placed it on Hapacha's head, saying, "Crown of thy crown, O Jehovah, crown I thy son, and thy light shall be wise and powerful, with love to all thy created beings, henceforth forever." The goddess then received them, and after due ceremonies, they all took their seats. Fragapatti in the midst of the throne. Athrava resigned at once during the stay of Fragapatti. The ensuers now chanted, "Glory be to thee, O light, the person of every kingdom, high and low. who hath brought our brothers and sisters home. By natural impulse of thanks, Hapach's hosts 50 million rose up and responded, singing to thee, O Jehovah, how shall our souls find words? Thy sons and daughters, love, how can we recompense? Make us light and clean, O Father, spotless before them and thee. But the anthems were long and sung with brilliancy, rejoicing and responding millions to millions as an opera of high heavens. When the music ceased, Fragapatti said, with the close of dawn of Dan, these hosts shall be received as brides and bridegrooms of Jehovah, and ascend with us to the regions of Gu Machala in Etheria. The apportioners will therefore divide them into groups in Harati. With the Etherian teachers prepared them. That this may be accomplished, I proclaim one day's recreation to assemble on the next day in order of business. The marshals then proclaimed as had been commanded, and the hosts went into recreation. The Etherians rushed into Hapach's atmosphereans with great glee, everyone desiring some of them. When they were called to labor, Fragapatti said, for the convenience of my own hosts, the light shall now be raised 2 degrees, in which case it will be well to permit the hosts of Hapacha to retire to the fields of Harati, where Athrava hath already placed and teachers for them. Accordingly, the conductors now removed Hapacha's hosts, save about 1 million, who reserved to endure the light. The ensuers chanted while as these arrangements were being carried out, and when they were accomplished, the music ceased. The chief marshal said, swift messengers, who are waiting without, salute Jehovah's throne and his God, and prayed in audience. Fragapatti said, whence come thy, and what is the nature of thy business? The marshal said, for the Asuan fields of Hotes. Their business is of the Azvai knots. Fragapatti said, on the sign of Imuts, admit them, greeting from God in the Father's name. The marshal withdrew for a short while and then returned, bringing in 1,000 swift messengers, of whom Aryun was goddess. She advanced near the throne to the left. Fragapatti said, Goddess Aryun, greetings to thee in Jehovah's name, proceed thou. Aryun said, greeting and love to thee, Fragapatti, and to all thy hosts. I hasten hither from the fields of Hotes. Section 12:1. On the one-time plateau and place of hoard, where are 1,000 million and not, since many days. This I report to the Lord God of Jaeth, Ahun, whose forces are all employed, and he sent me hither. Fragapatti said, it is well. Thou art at liberty, Horb. Canst thou unite the knot? Horb said, I have faith to try. To which Fragapatti replied, Athrava will go with thee, and do thou the labor. Choose, therefore, thy host from my Etherians, and have a vessel made sufficient so that thou findest it's advisable to bring them away. Thou canst do so. Retire then with the captains of the files, and make thy selections. In the meantime, give commands for the vessel to be made, and put in readiness for thee. Horeb said, with Jehovah's help, I will deliver them. And he saluted, and with the captain of the files, he withdrew and made his selections, choosing 5 million in all, of whom half were physicians and nurses. In the meantime, he had the proper workmen build a vessel of sufficient capacity and strength, as commanded by Fragapatti. In 7 days' time, everything was completed, and in Horeb commanded his hosts to enter the ship, and he and Athrava went in also, and presently they were off, being conducted by the goddess Aryun in her arrow ship in the place of the knot. The goddess Aryun slackened the speed of her arrow ship to suit that of Horeb's vessel. So onward together they sped in a direct line, propelled as a rocket is propelled by constant emission from the hulk, that which expenditure is manufactured by the crew and commanders skilled in welding Jehovah's elements. For as mortals find means to traverse the ocean to raise a balloon, so do the gods and spirits build and propel mightier vessels through the firmament betwixt the stars and over and under the beyond the sun. And when the Etherians highest raise in the most subtle spheres, send their ships coursing downward in the denser strata of a corporeal world, their ready workmen take in ballast and turn the fans and reverse the whirling screws to match the speed, the space, and course of travel. For its purpose, man learned the trade, having rank and grade according to the proficiency, many of them serving 1,000 years apprenticeship, and becoming so skilled in welding the elements and the knowledge of the degrees of density that thousands of millions of miles of roadways in heaven are as well learned book to them, and thus conservant with Jehovah's wide domains. They are eagerly sought after, especially in emergent cases or on journeys of millions of years. Far so well they know the requirements, the places of delight, the dangers of vortices and of eddies and whirlpools, that when a god saith, take me hither or yonder, they know the nearest way and the power requireth. For as Jehovah hath made icebergs on the corporeal ocean, dangerous to ships and heavy currents of trade winds, and currents in the oceans, so are they in the ethereal firmament, currents and densities, which the well-skilled God can take advantage of. Be it a slow trip of pleasure or a swift one of urgent business to suffering angels and mortals. And be a god or goddess dispatched by a higher council to a distant place suddenly, he or she must already acquainted with navigators sufficiently to know who to choose, and likewise understand the matter well enough to lend a helping hand if required. For oft the navigators have not swift messengers to pilot them, and yet a short journey of 50,000 miles may require as much skill as 1,000,000, especially in descending to a corporeal world. Horb knew, and he managed well, following course on the arrows trail till they neared the ruined plateau, and then amidst the broken currents, Arun dropped alongside, perceiving Horb's less wieldy vessel, and made fast. She said to the Horb, behold, we are near the place. Then Horb asked, how foundest thou a knot in such a wasted country? Arun answered him, when Jehovah created women, he gave to her two chief attributes, curiosity and solitude for others. So passing here, surveying the place where the first heavenly kingdom was, I remembered it had been said that Alf left some island place where once a colony in heaven had been built, and I halted to examine it. A moan and terrible sound greeted me. I heard the Oahspe knots, as I often heard others before. We landed and made fast, and presently went searching, led by the sad, sad noise. Then we came to the great mound, the knot, 1,000 million drudras bound in a heap, wailing, muffled, moaning, as it all the heap of them were in the throes of death, but could not die. Being myself powerless to overcome such fearful odds, I took the bearing of my regions where I could find the nearest God, and so have measured the knot. I set sail, and thou hast heard. Horb said, every day I behold thy wisdom, O Jehovah, in a new light. Thy wondrous judgment riseth up before me. Who but thee, O Father, had seen the fruitage of curiosity made perfect in thy daughters? From the light bud seen in mortal form to the overscanning of thy heavens by such goddess. As thus Horb discoursed, they arrived at a suitable landing place, where they made their vessels fast, and they hurried to the knot. Without much ado, Horb walled the knot around with low fire, leaving a gateway to the east, where he placed 1,000 sentinels. 1,000,000 of this army he stationed outside of and beyond the walls, and these were divided into groups and selectors, guardsmen, physicians, nurses, bearers, and manufacturers of fire and water. The selectors were provided with rods of fire and water and blinds. Then Horb stationed another 1,000,000 betwixt the knot and gateway, and these were stationed in 4 rows, each 2 rows facing but 2 pace apart, so that betwixt the row it was like a walled alleyway. And the other 3,000,000 Horb caused to surround the knot on every side. Each and every one of these were provided with a fire lamp, which they held in the right hand. And when all things were thus in readiness, Horb commanded the attack to begin. And at once the attackers thrust their fire lamps in the face of the drudra nearest by, and seizing them with the other hand, pulled them away. The Judras did not all relinquish their grip in the knot at sight of the lamp, but often required to be nearly burned and stifled with the light before they released their hold. Neither cometh this grip of evil but fear. The knot is nothing more nor less than a mass of millions and millions of spirits becoming panic-stricken and falling upon their chief or leader, who becometh powerless in their grip and is quickly rolled up in the midst of the knot. And when the deliverers thus began at the exterior of the knot, peeling off the crazed and moaning spirits, they hold them backward, where they are caught by the seconds, who in turn hold them into the alleyways, where they are again thrust forward till past the gate in the wall of fire. From the time, therefore, that the Judra deceiveth the thrust of the fire lamp in his face, he is not suffered to linger, but is whirled suddenly from one to another so quickly he cannot fasten to any persons or things. For were they to fasten on even the deliverers, first one of them another, soon a second knot would result. Because of which, to unite a knot of 1,000 million crazed angels is not only a dangerous proceeding, but a feast of unusual grandeur to be undertaken by 5 million Ethereans. To provide against accident, Horeb appointed Athrava to take charge of delivered after they were beyond the walls, for Athrava had been long practiced in such matters, thousands of years. So Athrava divided and arranged the Judras into groups, placing guardians with fire rods over them, and in some cases taking the groups away and walling them around the fire also. Now, by the time 500 million of the knot were released, some of the external delivery groups began to tie themselves into knots. And then Athrava saw this. He said unto Horeb, behold, they are becoming too numerous for my host. I have not sufficient guardsmen, Horeb said. Then I will cease a while, and instead of delivering, come and assist thee. According, Horeb suspended the battle for a time, and together they labored with those without, untying the small knots and arraying them in safer ways, placing a greater number of guards over them. This done, the Asuras struck up lively music, started dancing and marching, for such is a routine of restoring process practiced by the gods. Then come the nurses with cheerful words, with mirth and gaiety, following one diversion with another in rapid succession. But to the raving maniacs and to the stupid and to the helpless blind, the physicians now turned their attention. Again, Horeb and his army fell upon the knot, pulling the external ones away and hurling them out, but not so rapidly, having fewer deliverers. For he had bequeathed an extra million to Athrava outside the walls, and another 300 million were delivered. Horeb ceased again and joined with Athrava to assist and divide the group with them in the same way. And he bequeathed another million of his army, Athrava, and then again resumed the attack on the knot, and thus continued till he reached the core of the knot, having untied a whole 1,000 million Judras, gradually lessening his army and enlarging that of Athrava. And then Horeb came to the core of the knot. Behold, he found Oahspe, the false god, who falsely styled himself Thor, the Etherean. And in the midst of the knot, they had jewels of rare value, and stolen crowns, and stolen symbols, and rods, and holy water, urns, and incense, and a broken wheel of Jehovah, a broken triangle of the gods, and in fact, the sufficiency of things thereof, one might write a book in the description. Suffice, a false god, and his kingdom had collapsed, and he fell crushed in the glory of his throne. And there were with him 7 false lords, who were also crushed in the terrible fall. Oahspe and his lords, from their confinement in the knot, were also crazed and wild with fear, screaming, crying with their strength, even as were all the others, like drunkards, longing debauched, deliberate, and fearful of imaginary horrors, which had no existence. Or as one hand, long compressed, becometh numb, so that when the pressure is taken away, it still seemeth not free. So would not Oahspe nor his lords believe that they were free, but still cried, calling for help. At this time there came from Ahoan, god of Jaeth, a messenger who 40 companions and with 500 apprentices, and the messenger's name was Hub, An atmosphere in 300 years, grade 2, grading from Ahon in Jehovah's name. Cherub said, to whom shall I speak? To whom's honor the deliverance credit? Save Jehovah's, Athraba said. To Horeb of Zedhoz, and disciple of Fragapatti, who was sojourning in Maru, capital of Harati. And Athrava further asked Cherub his name, whence he came, and especially if he knew about the knot before and history of its cause. To which Cherub replied, from Ahon, this I have learned. Some 400 years ago, one of the sub-gods named Obi, because of his modesty and bird-like fleetness, was promoted by Samadhi, who is now commissioned master of the Ahuans by Fragapatti. This whom Horeb had delivered is Hobi, the one-time faithful sub-god of honorable purpose. His kingdom prospered for 200 years, and his name and fame spread throughout all these heavens and even down to mortals, who were inspired by his admiring spirits to make him images of birds, Obi or Ibis, and dedicated them to Obi. He became vain of the flattery and losing faith in Jehovah. Finally came out in unbelief, saying there was no all-highest, save as each and every god chose to exalt himself. Within his dominions, which numbers nearly 1,000 million angels, were a score of more of lords under him, to the wisest of whom he began to preach his views, looking to personal laudation and glory. In the course of a score of years, the matter culminated in Obi, a few of his favorite lords proclaiming a new kingdom, styled the all-highest kingdom in the all-highest heaven, and the title he assumed was Thor, the only begotten son of all light. Thor, the all light personated. Thor, the personal son of Mai and virgin universe. Thus Obi cut loose from the true God and his kingdoms, and immediately walked his kingdom around with a standing army, promoting 7 of the most efficient admirers of lords and other generals and captains. And at once he set about enlarging and enriching his throne and his capital, which he called Avasi, and known as Hots on the true charts. In the course of 100 years, his kingdom became a place of 2,000 million souls. His chief city, Avasi, was the richest and most gaudy city that had ever been in these heavens. The streets were paved with precious stones. The palaces for himself, his lords, and his marshals and generals were built of the most costly jewels with pillars, arches, and chambers of the most elaborate workmanship and of the most costly material. Obi became a tyrant and saved his lords and a few favored friends. None were permitted to approach his throne, but by crawling on their bellies and even under guard, nor were they permitted to raise their eyes upon him, save at a very great distance, and his subjects were his slaves. In fact, though under progressive discipline, these slaves were sent far away into atmospheria, or else down to the earth, to gather tribute to the glory of Thor and his favorite, nor did these slaves mistrust. They were working for Jehovah, believing he believed in the capital, Avasi. At first, Thor educated the otherwise improved his slaves, but finding them less obedient in consequence of knowledge, he finally destroyed all the heavenly schools and colleges and resolved to keep his subjects forever ignorant. Consequently, the wiser ones deserted him, save his officers and his angels were without knowledge, knowing nothing, save that they had to work for Thor forever. In addition to ignorance, Thor kept his subjects forever in fear of himself, forever threatening them with terrible punishments if they ceased to pray to him as the only personified all light, Jehovah. And in the course of time, his people forgot all aspirations for any other heaven or any other god. Many of these were deputized to dwell with mortals as guardian spirits, persuading mortals to worship Thor and Ibis, threatening them with being turned into serpents and toads after death if they obeyed not these injunctions. Thus ruled Thor the false for 400 years in Oahspe. Neither was it possible for Samati to send an army of sufficient strength to overcome such a kingdom. But a change finally came, a light descended from the higher heavens 6 generations ago, and according to the legends of old, it was ominous that the gods of higher worlds would intercede. So Samadhi, taking advantage of this, sent emissaries to Thor, otherwise Obi, and solicited him to give over his evil ways and reestablish Jehovah. Thor, the false, sent back word saying that I was a child. I was taught to fear Jehovah, and I feared him. After long experience, I have discovered there is nothing to fear in all worlds. If there be any Jehovah, he is without form or a person or a sense. I hear him not, I revere him not. My heaven is good enough for me and my lords. As for my subjects, let no man and God nor Lord meddle with them. Samadhi, who is the lawful God of all these heavens and of the earth, thus perceived no way to reach Thor's slaves, for the slaves were too ignorant to desire anybody or thing save Thor. Nevertheless, he sent word the second time to Thor, this time saying, thy kingdom is even now destitute of intelligent people, sufficient to protect thee in case of panic. If a comet or any sudden light or the passage of an Avanza through thy dominion should take place, thou wouldst surely find thyself overthrown in a knot. Thy subjects looked upon thee as all the highest, they will surely rush upon thee. So Thor sent the message back with an insulting answer. Thus the matter stood till after Jehoan's appointment as god of Jaeth and her heavens, which at once cut off Thor's emissaries to mortals and confined him within his own kingdom. At this time, Samadhi was commissioned to establish the word of God amongst mortals, but he communicated Thor's position to Ahon. Ahon sent ambassadors to Thor, the false, beseeching him in the same manner to give up his personality and return with his kingdom to Jehovah, promising him the best of assistance. To this Thor, the false, replied by the messenger, saying, Ahoan, thou usurper, if thou desirest favors of me, thou shalt approach me as a god and angels do, by crawling on thy belly before me. Encroach thou not one jot or tittle on my most high kingdom, or I will banish thee back to thy miscreant regions with stripes and curses. Ahon was surprised by, sorry guys, my allergies, but perceived thou till trouble came upon Ob. Nothing could be done for him. So the first time Jehovah suffered him to go full period of self-glory. Thus Ob fell. Turbi ceased, and Tharaba said, O Jehovah, when will men cease to fall? Thou have proclaimed thyself in all places high and low. Thy gods and lords and countless angels have proclaimed thee. Thou alone art password to all the universe. Thy name hath 1,000 exalted devices to win the souls of mortals and angels from the darkness to light, and yet they turn away from thee, thou creator of suns and stars, countless ethereal worlds, and they set up themselves as an object of worship. O smallness of gods and men, O the vanity, thy little children. Thou hast said to mortals, go not into the marshes, for there is fever, but not large cities, for there is sin. Go not after lust, for there is death, but they go in headlong, and they are buried and dead. To those who are risen in heaven, thou hast said, remember the lessons of earth, lest ye fall. Remember the fate of self-conceit, lest ye be scourged. Remember the king and the queen of earth, how they became bound in heaven, lest ye also become bound. But they will not heed, vain. Self riseth up in the soul, they behold no other God, but themselves, in whom they acknowledge wisdom. I'm almost there, guys. Horb heard the story of Turb, and he said unto him, since I have heard these things, I am resolved to bind Thor the false and his lords, and send them with thee to Ahoan. Turb said, this would be my light, because Thor insulted Ahoan. It would be well for Ahoan to restore him to his senses. Horb said, tarry then a little while, and my physicians will bind them. that they do not harm in their madness, and I will have them delivered into the boat. So the proper persons bound up Thor and his lords with bands of cord, for they were wild and delirious. And after that, they were put into Torb's boat, ready to be carried away. Torb said to Turb, greeting to the Ahoan in the name of Jehovah. And said thou to him that according to the laws of these heavens, a false god or false lord, who hath led the people away from the Father, shall after his deliverance be made to reteach the truth of his deceived subjects. Neither shall he be promoted higher or faster than the lowest of his former subjects. For which reason, after Ahoan's companions have restored Og and his lords to soundness of mind, he and his lords shall be again bequeathed with their own kingdoms. In the meantime, I will, in the same plateau, begin the establishment of a new kingdom in the Father out of these crazed Drudras. Turb and his companions then re-entered their boat, set sail at once for Aho's kingdom. Thor the false and his lords wailing and crying with fear, knowing not any man nor woman nor child. Horb now turned his attention to the hosts of panic-stricken Drudras, who were constantly forming themselves in knots and yet being rapidly severed by the Etherians. To Athrava he said, how more helpless is the deranged spirit than a mortal? They float on their own wild thoughts. At one time they fly from us before the wind, at another they ran together upon us, like molten gum, and we cannot keep them off. Athrava said, behold the wisdom of the Father in creating man in a corporeal body. What a glorious anchorage for a young or weak or deranged spirit. What a home corporeal body is, how better we can manage these crazed ones, were they thus provided. Horb said, which showeth us the way we must proceed to restore them. Since we cannot create corporeal bodies for them, the Father hath given us power to provide them subjectivity for the time being. Thus proceeded Horb and Athrava, first wailing the place around the fire, so none of the Drudras could escape, and then dividing them into thousands of groups, making subjective bodies for them, to which they bound themselves willingly, and which prevented them from fastening to one another. This is what Drudras called reincarnation in another world. And whilst they were thus provided temporarily by their teachers and governors and nurses, many of them imagined themselves to be kings and queens and high priests and even lords and gods. For more than 100 days, Horb and Athrava labored in the above manner, and the physicians and nurses and ensuers labored to restore the minds of the people, and they mastered the adversary and had them well nigh all restored in discipline, when messengers came from Fragapatti greeting, saying, behold, the dawn of Dan is passing swiftly, and I must yet visit the Lord of gods in the different heavens of the earth. It is therefore my decree that Athrava return to Meru and resume the throne, that Horb return also and join me and my student and companion on my journeys. Send these my commandments to Ahoan, greeting in my name, and will be provided a lord to rule over the delivered not of Oahspe. So Horb and Athrava were relieved by a lord appointed by Ahoan, and his name was Sukha, witch throw, an atmospherian pupil of Samadhi, and 400 years and a great resolution of proficiency. So Horb provided Sukha, which though, with a throne, and left 4 million teachers, nurses, and physicians with him, and with other million. Horb and Athrava departed from Meru in Harati. Now as for the cruisers, the swift messengers with the rune, as soon as the knot was safely united, and Orb and his lords abound and delivered into Turb's keeping to be sent to Ahoan, they departed, having recorded the proceeding in Ahoan's diary. Fragapatti, having heard of the success of Horb in delivering the knot, determined to honor him as a reception at Meru. Accordingly, Fragapatti set heralds out into Harati, proclaiming a day of recreation and inviting as many as chose to come to Meru to receive Horb. The proper officers provided musicians, flags, banners, and fireworks, suitable for the enjoyment of hundreds of millions of inhabitants of Harati, Others provided reception boats, 1,000 to go part way and meet Horob's ship. Fragapatti afterwards said of this matter, I had policy in this. Horob was to be the next god of earth and her heavens, and whatsoever would win the love and admiration of the awe of his unlearned subjects would contribute to the resurrection. So guys, I'm going to cut. Okay, I'll do one more because it's short. This is a lot of reading. So for one day, there was a great rejoicing in Meru, and where it was ended and the people retired to their respective places, the lights were raised for business. Fragapatti said to Athrava, come thou and resume Jehovah's throne. As for myself, I will go now and establish another habitation in Zedho. And after that, I will visit the Lord gods of division of the earth. And when I have completed these labors, it will be near the end of the dawn of Dan. See to it, therefore, that all who wish to prepare for the third resurrection be duly notified. And now, when Fragapatti had risen up from the throne, swift messengers were announced from Santhes, the inhabitor of earth. The marshals were commanded to admit them, and presently the swift messengers came in, greeting the Jehovah's name. They said, Santhes sends love to Fragapatti. When the resurrection of this dawn is come, the Santhes will visit Meru, and he will also bring with him one sea, first delivered of brides and bridegrooms of the first harvest of earth. When the message had been thus delivered, there was great rejoicing in the capital. Fragapatti thanked the messengers in the Father's name, and after that the swift messengers withdrew. Presently Fragapatti withdrew also, taking Horob and Hapacha with him. And they departed out of the capital and came to the Avanza. The marshals had the accompanying hosts assembled, 10 million, and so they entered the ship, and amidst music and rejoicing they departed, going direct to the kingdom of Yima, Lord God of Shem and her heavens. Yima had been notified of their coming, and had a Pedsmar rowboat made in order to go and meet them. The Pedsmar was sufficient to carry 10,000 musicians, 30,000 rowers, and 2,000 travelers, and such were the numbers who embarked on her to meet Fragapatti. 3 years had now elapsed since Yima set out to establish the Father's kingdom in the heavens of Shem, and save through messengers, little was known in Meru of Yima's labors. Fragapatti had said of him, Yima liveth with the voice, he cannot err. In the seventh diaphragm of the east Api, the vessels met, and Fragapatti opened the lower division of the Alvanza and took in Yima's boat, and crew and passengers, amidst music and rejoicing. And after due ceremonies, Fragapatti caused the Alvanza to proceed, conducted by Leaps, one of Yima's passengers, and they proceeded rapidly until they arrived in Astroth, the capital of Yima's kingdom, in atmosphere, first grade, and resting upon the earth. My throat's dry. It hurts. Holy shit. I did it. And I can tell you what. I made it through half of that, and then lights out, storm hit. I tried. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, sorry for the mispronunciations. I try. Please don't forget to hit that like, share, subscribe buttons if you haven't done so already. And if you support my work, that'd be amazing. So I could continue doing this and not have to get a matrix job. Until next time, guys, sending each and every one of you love, light, and protection and shielding. Be safe out there. Be seen. And I'll see you on the next one.